Okay guys, we're back with part 3. We're gonna start with putting on our bookmarks. So I cut 3 pieces of this beautiful ribbon to fit the length that I wanted. And what we're gonna do is we cut them, and I already did this one, but the ends of them are gonna be frayed, and they fray easy. So you're gonna take a lighter and you're gonna burn the edge, okay? This melts any of the plastic and stuff that's in it, the acrylic, and makes it where it's not gonna fray. And you get a nice straight edge that is hard and is not gonna unravel on you. But don't let it like burn. Blow it out, guys, okay? We're gonna do that on both ends. And then we're gonna take our tacky glue and we're going to attach it to sorry, there's a duck outside that occasionally sounds like it's laughing. We're gonna attach it to the top of our book spine, okay? And so I'm gonna take all 3 of these and I'm gonna lay them this way. Nah, I lied. I didn't lie, guys, but I kind of did. I just put too much glue in that area. We're gonna lay them this way and keep them up because we want them to be able to flip over the pages. And like I said, I'm doing 3 of them. I want her to be able to have the ability to mark multiple places when she's drawing. And I'm just gonna press it on, and I put a little tacky glue on top that I'm gonna smooth across it with my finger just a little bit, make sure it all stays. And this is not completely dry yet, all right, but we're gonna go ahead and start the next part of the binding process because time crunch, as we discussed about, and I'm gonna quicken this part. Usually I would bind this separately and then combine it. I'm gonna bind it to the book mostly right now. There's still gonna be part of it that we're gonna have to finish binding because I don't want the cover to dry creased here. I want it to dry hard and straight so that when you bend it, it works correctly. So I'm taking just regular copy paper. I considered using cardstock, but I decided to use this because she's a kid. And I'm taking about half of it, about 250 pages. Making sure that I have enough to fill the spine. And it's very important, guys, that this paper is evenly lined up because it will not bind the way that we are binding it unless it is even, okay? There are different methods for binding pages. You can use like a needle and thread. You can use a netting. We're just gonna do a simple glue binding. But because of that, precision is key, all right? Precision is definitely key here. So, I'm gonna take our tacky glue, and the first thing I'm gonna do is put glue on the front cover. And I'm putting it on the front cover so you guys can see the whole binding process. Usually I would actually start with the back cover, but I want you guys to be able to see it, and from the angle you're at, you're not gonna be able to see it unless I do it on this cover. So, cover it with glue, be very generous. I'm gonna take our sponge. I'm gonna pat this glue down, spread it out, make sure it is all over. I need some more glue in this area. As I said in our last part, there is no such thing as too much glue in this part of the process, okay? If you think you have enough glue, add more. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take our paper Get it as lined up as I absolutely possibly can. And I am going to put it right on there. Put it close to the, what is this called again, guys? The spine, but not on the spine, all right? So I'm right at the edge of the cover for our book. I'm not on the spine though, all right? I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I didn't quite lay it down the correct way. I'm actually going to take this part off so this part I can get exactly where I want it. There we go. This is going to hide that inside of your cover too that I was telling you about. If you use a bigger paper, you could actually hide the whole thing, but we're not using a bigger paper. And then I'm going to add just a little more glue right on this first page because I want this first page. This first page isn't usable, guys. It's just your cover. And so I want it to stay glued to our next piece of paper. Make sure we get that glue patted down. On here, we want it to be thin because we don't want it to spread out too much. Then we're going to add the whole stack back on top. Right on top there. Okay. Now, double check that this is even. Again, even as much as you possibly can, guys. I know that this part is hard, but if you have like a ruler or a level, it would work best because the more straight and even you get this, the easier it's going to be to bind, and ultimately the sturdier and stronger your binding will be. We got to bind this in 3 sides. We have to bind this side. Okay, I'm going to move you for a second. And then we also have to bind right here, but just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start by binding the inside of our ream of paper, and then we'll do this part. All right, I'm going to move you down closer so you can see better what I'm doing. And I'm going to put this glue right directly on my sponge. This is why I told you that these sponges are going to be ruined. Okay? You can do this with your finger too, but just so you know, from experience, if you do it with your finger, you do run the risk of paper cuts, and you won't know you have a paper cut until like the next day because the glue actually keeps your finger sealed. Okay? And I am going to end up using my finger on part of this because I picked up the wrong sponge. I told you I like the brushes for a reason. The sponge does not get all the way down, so I'm going to move it and I'm going to use my hands. Because I want to make sure that this binding is legitly all the way down this spine on every single piece of paper. Now, if you were doing a netting binding, what you would do is you would do this, and then you would add a netting on top, and then you would add more glue on top of that netting to help secure it. We're not doing a netting binding because I'm short on time. I did a version of the netting binding on my own where I used fabric instead of net, but this is a sketchbook for a 10-year-old, and I don't think that the netting is ultimately going to make a difference for her. I think that this will be just as fine. I was just being fancy on my own. And if you really, really want to be fancy, you can totally try the method where you use a needle and thread. But I will tell you that you have to have patience and a very sharp needle because you got to go through every single piece of paper. And when you are doing bulk pieces of paper like this, that can be difficult. If you do that, I do recommend like splitting it up into like 4 or even 6 parts so that you don't do it all together and then bind them together at the end. It'll just ultimately make that easier for you. You want this in every crevice, like I said, so I'm putting lots of glue. I don't want a single page of this to come off. I want a nice thick layer. Oops, bumped that, so I better go back over that part. And this top page on here will eventually get glued like the front page did to the back here, but because it's still drying, we're not gonna quite do that yet. I wanna try to give everything a chance to set a little before I bind it. Now I'm gonna tilt you a little bit so you can see the corner. I don't know, can you kind of see that? Not much. You're not gonna go too deep on the corner. You're not binding this whole side. You're literally just binding this edge because you want the pages to still turn. Oops, I just dripped some glue on the ground, guys. But you do need to get a little bit over the edge onto this side. Otherwise, they won't turn. I mean, like, they'll turn, but then they'll rip off. I'm gonna use this sponge because I got a little bit further than I meant to. Try to wipe off as much excess glue as I can. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the top. And just repeat that process. Make sure I'm getting that corner and a little bit going in on the side. Okay, and that's how it is to do, how simple it is to do a glue binding. We are gonna let this sit because we're not done with the binding. We have to bind it to the spine and to the back yet, but I want this to dry a little before I bend the whole book, okay? Because I also want the inside of the spine to dry a little before I bend the whole book. So we're gonna do that, and then I will be back with part 4. Okay, guys?